Please let me know if all of you can see my screen. Great. All right. So what is MS Entra? Before we talk about MS Entra, we will talk about identity and access management. You should know this term first, only then you will get to know, you will can imagine that what we are talking about. So identity and access management. Now, when we talk about identity access management, so identity would be, for example, in an organization, you have multiple resources there. What do you have as resources? You have, let's say, servers, you have machines, maybe desktops, you have applications in which you have to sign in, you have maybe like SharePoint sites, you have Teams channels. So I'm talking about everything, like maybe the on-premises resources or the cloud resources. So apart from Teams, SharePoint, let's say you have booking system, MS Booking, under again comes under applications. All of these resources which you have in the organization, you want users to be able to access these applications. You have different users, you have groups under which these users are managed. Now, how do you provide access to these resources to these users? That is known as access management. Identities here would be anything. It We also call them as objects. And when we say objects, it could be the users or it could be the resources. So we are providing access to one object over another object. So entire management of this thing is known as identity access management. Now, if we talk about two more components in this Entra or an Active Directory, we have something known as IDP, which is identity provider, and we have something called SP, which is known as service provider. And then we have here users or employees who want to access the services from service provider. Now, when I talk about service provider, for example, assume you have Exchange services, maybe Exchange on premises or Exchange online. So any server which is hosting these services, that would become a service provider. It could be anything. I'm just taking an example of Exchange. It could be anything, Teams server or any other application you want to access. Now, when I talk about identity provider, that is that system which would authenticate and authorize users to access these services under service provider. Now, for example, let's say there's a user. Let's say this user name is user1. And this user wants to access a mailbox which is hosted under a database of a service provider of the Exchange server. Now, if this user wants to access this mailbox, can it access it directly? Can you simply log in, not log in, can you simply say, okay, I want to open this ABC or user1 at domain.com address? And can you simply log in and access his mailbox? No, he would not be. Why? Because he would have to go through a process which is known as authentication. And authentication is provided by this system known as identity provider. This IDP would authenticate, it will check his credentials, his username and password in between, and once it authenticates it, then it will provide him a token. This user will provide this token to the service provider. Service provider will check his identity, okay, what username he has, what level of access he has, what shared mailboxes he can access, which data he can access in his mailbox. And then this service provider can provide all the data according to the token he provided to this users, maybe to his browser where he opened his web Outlook, or maybe the Outlook application either on his phone or in on his desktop. So when we talk about identity access management, this means an IDP would be there, a service provider would be there. Service provider will hold the objects, IDP will authenticate, and users will be the person who will be trying to access it. Now, when we talk about examples of IDP, when we talk about Active Directory on premises, that is an IDP. When we talk about Azure or Entra, Azure AD was the previous name, Entra is the new name, which changed 2 years ago. This is an IDP. When we talk about Okta, when we talk about Facebook or Google, any system which can authenticate your identity and gives you an access to a service provider, that is known as IDP. I'll give you one more example. Now, for example, let's say you are trying to log in to an application, like it's a web application. Let's say this application uses artificial intelligence to modify your photographs. Let's say it enhances your photographs to HD images. You open your browser, you go to this address of this application, let's say www.ai.com, something like this. When you go on this web page, it says either create your credentials or log in through a different IDP provider. So let's say you must see like they you get option like login with Gmail, Google account, sorry, not Gmail, like Google account, or login with FB, login with Twitter or Okta. It gives you multiple options. That means this application is able to communicate with these IDP providers. And once either you can create your own credentials, which will be handled by this application's database server, or you choose, okay, I want to log in with Google. So once you choose that, the authentication request goes to the Google web page wherein you provide your Gmail or your Google account and your password. When you provide your credentials here, once it is authenticated by Google IDP, then it redirects you back to this application with a token and with an authorization. You might have seen that pop-up which says, okay, I authorize this application to access my resources. So let's say this application wants access to your Google Photos application where you have all the photographs saved. When you log in with your Gmail account, and once you authorize this application to access your Google Photos, then at that moment, two things is happening. First, authentication is happening here with the Google account. And once you authorize this application to access your photos, which are saved in Google Photos, then you are authorizing as well. So here, once this token goes back, it would contain two things, two information. There's this username is this, it has authenticated itself. Authentication is done. I authorize and I authenticate that this user is genuine, legitimate user. Also, I authorize this user to have access to his photographs, which this application can access. So there are two terms known as authentication plus authorization. This question is generally asked in the interviews as well. So remember, guys, authentication means validating the credentials of a user, validating the user that it says, okay, I'm ABC person, so I'm validating myself. Please authenticate. That is known as authentication. And if an application is trying to access some resources on your behalf, that is known as authorization. I'll give you one more example. Let's say you log into a machine. Let me open one more whiteboard. Let's say you have a machine, computer on your your environment, like your organization internal network. This machine is connected to your local AD. It's a domain join machine. Okay, a user logs into this machine, and as soon as that user authenticates himself, he entered username and password to log into this machine. As soon as that user authenticates himself, he is authenticated here in the backend, in the AD, and with the level of authorization as well. Whatever access he gets over different resources. For example, let's say after logging into this machine, he goes to a network drive and that network drive is configured backend in the AD, and this user here it is configured that any user with this domain or this organization unit or this group would be able to access this network drive. So as soon as he enters his username and password, he logs into this machine. So two things happen. First, authentication, because he was able to log in, or AD authorized him to log into this machine, and then all the internal resources, let's say applications or network drives or other resources which are configured here, that user got access to that resource as well. So he got authorized as well because of this policies here. So before I move on to the next concept, is this part IAM, identity and access management, where a user gets access to a resource, and because of the IDP and service provider model, he can get access either in Azure or using Okta or any other IDP, or talking about the on-prem environment as well. Is this part clear? What is authentication and authorization? I would like to get a response from everyone on the chat. Any questions, please ask me here. So Biswajit is all clear. Please let me know about others as well. If you have any queries, please feel free to ask. Okay, Sayam, when you say user point, okay, I was talking as an admin. So what exactly is not clear here? Like when a user logs in to the on-premises environment or when he logs in to the Azure. Sayam, if you could elaborate your user point, then I would be able to elaborate further. Amit, could you please allow Sayam to unmute himself, if it's possible, please? Sayam, are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, I'll repeat for you, Sayam. So, as I mentioned, when we try to access a resource, that resource could be anywhere, either in the cloud application or that resource could be your on-premises resource. So when we talk about resource, what we are talking about here is maybe any application which is hosted on your on-prem servers, your organization's internal network, or it could be an application which is hosted on Azure or Entra. It could be a machine like a server or a desktop. It could be a SharePoint site. It could be a Teams channel. So any resource which a user wants to access. I would like to ask, is it possible that any user can access any of these resources just by visiting their page? For example, let's say this application is known as is hosted at this URL, https colon forward slash, let's say app1 dot domain dot com. Now, if a user wants to access this application, is it like secure enough? Is it okay if we leave it open? Maybe like any user, he just open his browser, goes to this URL and simply able to access all the components of this application. Or for example, if we talk about SharePoint site, any user goes to the URL of SharePoint and be able to access all the files put there, or maybe able to access any mailbox just as it is. No, he would have to provide a username and password to access it. He will have to authenticate himself. When I say authenticate, means he'll have to prove that this user who is claiming to, that I am, let's say I'm user one, let's say I'm Siddharth, I want to access this application. My manager says you should be able to access this application. My manager says you should be able to get access to this SharePoint size. Please give me access. I go to this URL, but I'm not able to. Why? Because everything is secured with the credentials. If I enter my username and password, and once a system which is known as IDP validates that okay, this user has provided the correct credentials, correct username and password, okay, I have validated. Only then access to these resources are given. That system is known as authentication. Authentication means this system known as IDP, which could be Entra, which could be Okta, which could be any other third party system, which could be your on premises AD, validates your username and password. And after that, it's able to access the resource that is known as authentication, means it has validated it. This is correct. But when this users further, authentication is just one part. But after it's authenticated, like this identity is confirmed, but what level of access this user has got on these applications. For example, once he gets access to SharePoint site, does he have an access of contributor, editor, owner, or just a reader? What level of access? That is decided under authorization part. Now, for example, let's say I am added to a Teams channel. Teams channel would have roles like owner or just a member. Once I log in to my Office 365 account and I want to access this Teams channel, okay, my credentials were authenticated when as soon as I went to my Office 365 account. I go to like portal.office.com, I entered my credentials and I would be able to see whatever applications I have access to. But if I am going to the right Teams channel, or let's say even I don't have a license and I'm trying to access Teams, would I be able to? No, because I don't have the authority. So all that part which handles authorization, like if a user has access to an application, if yes, what level of access it has, that would come under authorization. That is also decided here. So once this user provides his credentials and a token flows happens between the IDP provider and this user, here it's decide if user is a valid user and what level of access it has once that token is handed over by the system to that user browser or the application, and by application to the service provider. In that scenario, the service provider will get to know, okay, this user has provided me this and this token. This token says, token means a ticket or like a identity card. This says that this user has access to these resources. Okay, let them in. I'll give you one more example for very simple clarification. You go to a movie hall, you have a ticket. In that ticket, you have, if you have access to the back seat where you have like the recliners, you have access to the middle seats where you get the best view, or you have access to the front seats. Now, with that ticket, you are able to log into that theater, that Audi, right? But that was the authentication part, means you could enter the gate. You validated that you have a ticket and you are well okay to go into that hall. But after you go into that hall, which seats you are authorized to sit on, that is also written on your ticket itself. That is the token which IDP provider after it was validated, right? Where you entered the hall, then again there's a person, there's a checker, you show your ticket to him, he says okay, go to the back seat, go to the middle seat, or go to the front seat, and then you watch a movie. So that's a part of authorization, like what access you have after you entered that system, that environment. Did it make sense, Sam? We will talk about it again once we take our first class. Don't worry. Sam, did it make sense? Great. All right. Any other question before we proceed further from anyone else? I'm more than okay. I will be providing some PowerPoint slides like this. So it will cover all the basics. I will also, like, time to time after every class, I'll share few articles, very good YouTube videos which you can watch, and to understand the concept which we would discuss on the class itself. So these are some kind of pointers, like a summary, which will help you what we read. And if you want to read in details, then there are tons of Microsoft and third-party articles available, which I can share with you after the class, or you can search yourself as well. And if you have any confusion, you would be able to come to me. These are summary points, so that you won't have to go into very depth. But yes, you're free to like search and then like go watch YouTube videos, which I will also be sharing for the better concepts. There's no PDF file which would be shared, but yes, links to Microsoft articles would be shared for definitely along with these PowerPoint slides. Definitely. Whatever we are going to discuss in the class, that will be mentioned in my PowerPoint slide. So because like most of the students who take these classes on weekends are working professionals, they don't get much time to go through the entire big articles of Microsoft. So if we have these kind of summary steps, you can read them, and if nothing is clear, call me directly, drop me a message on the WhatsApp, or just go on Google and just type about the topic, and you will get tons of articles. If you have time, go read it. You have any confusion, ask me. Would that be okay, Mohsen? Okay, now just to give you an overview of the Entra, let me log into the Entra portal. Before that, I would also like to give you a very basic idea of very common known terms. So, like, what will be the agenda for this entire course? It will cover SC 300, and we will be doing labs. And also, after the course completes, we will do practice questions, which will help you in for the interviews as well, or if you are like appearing for the exam. Now, I was talking about like what was identity and access management. So, one more important thing, guys. Earlier, when this cloud concept was not there, so this cloud authentication, Azure, Okta, all of this stuff came like few years ago, maybe around 2011 or 10. Before that, the traditional method was to set up your own servers on your internal network. Those were called as Active Directory. So most of you would know that what Active Directory does, but I'll just give you a glimpse. So what is Active Directory? Active Directory is a combination of all the identities or all the objects and resources which would contain, when we say identities, that would be the employees, the users. When we say resources, it could be anything like printers, your desktops, then your servers, then on-premises applications, all of these stuffs. So for better management and to provide access to the users and groups or organization unit. So in order to manage these identities under org units and to provide access to all of the resources, this Active Directory was created. So what it does is, it is a logical structure. When we say logical structure means it's not a physical database itself. It just organizes these objects and these users under a physical architecture, so that if you want to manage anything. You want to give access to any user, any group, or any organization unit over these resources, you can do it with the help of Active Directory. For example, I would say, like for example, have you seen, like when you go to a restaurant, you get a menu there. In that menu, your menu, like your dishes, your items are organized in a different, what I would say, different zoners or different categories. You have got like starters, then you have got like veg items, veg main course, you have got non-veg main course. So here, why this menu is presented to you, so that you can easily identify what exactly you want to have. You go to that specific section and then you order it. Similarly, Active Directory is kind of a logical architecture to present all of your users group, organization unit, and your resources, so that when you want to give somebody access to anything, when you want to remove the access, when you want to introduce a user into the organization, you create a new object. When you want to let that user go, you delete that object. When you want to, like, add any other device in your environment, you add that device here, and then you provide that user access to that device. For that entire management, this Active Directory was is used. But the drawback it had was that this Active Directory needed servers. And when we say servers, that means like you needed physical architecture on your somewhere, maybe on your, like inside your company's premises or maybe outside. And when we say servers, it's not just the servers, it's the entire infrastructure you had to create before creating your resources or users. When I said infrastructure, that means you would need big racks, you would need some rooms where the temperature would have to be maintained, you'd have to like install air conditioners to manage the temperature. Then you would need IT persons, you would need the network, you would need the network team, you would need the server team, and there are so many of like the initial setup expenses you had to bear, or organizations had to bear before setting up this thing here, before having even thinking of even one resource, maybe even one machine and one user. If you had to set it up, you had to plan in advance your expenses and this entire infrastructure. Only then you could think of, okay, let's go ahead. But this having this cloud infrastructure wherein you can start your organization only even you have only one user and one resource, even then you can go ahead and establish the IT environment for your organization. That is the best part of this cloud infrastructure. So why organizations which had Active Directory for years, why all of them or most of them have moved to a cloud, Entra, to manage all of this thing? Why? What are the benefits? We will discuss that. Cost effective and lower maintenance. So as I mentioned, let's say you have 10 users in your organization and you want to manage them with the help of some identity and access management. You want to have a central system wherein you can see that, okay, this user has access over this resource, this user can log into that machine, or this user can log into that specific site or maybe that network drive. In that scenario, for even 10 users in like Entra, what you can do is you can simply buy 10 licenses from Microsoft and you can start it. But if you think about having an entire infrastructure before setting it up, that would be very like expensive. Scalability. Let's say you start your organization with 10 users, but over a couple of years, now those 10 users are now 1,000 users. You planned that, okay, you thought earlier I would be starting with, let's say, 10 users, but over a couple of years I would be having 100 or 200 users. So you designed, you planned in advance, okay, let's have some servers, some space, some infrastructure which would be like more than enough to handle 200 or 300 users. That would be good. But you grew well and now you have 1,000 users in your organization. You will have to think again, you'll have to remodify your entire infrastructure to accommodate those 1,000 users. the resources you have. You will have to deploy more servers, more ACs, more racks, more IT persons. But scalability in Azure would give you that option. Earlier you bought 10 licenses. As you grow, keep adding more licenses. It's very easy. You don't have to worry about the expansion of the infrastructure. Elasticity. Let's say you move to 1,000 resources, but all of a sudden some like recession came and your business went down, and again you're back to 100 users. Now what would you do? Let's say you planned and you had the entire 1,000 users infrastructure. What would you do now with that infrastructure when the like users have left to only few resources and only 100 users? That would be wastage. But in Microsoft, in Azure Entra, you can simply like take away those licenses. You say, okay, we need 100 licenses now. I don't know, need 1,000 licenses, and you're good. Means whatever you use, pay for that. Even for example, you're creating your virtual machines in Azure. For those virtual machines, earlier you needed 100 machines, but now you only need 10 machines. You just turn off your 90 machines and let Azure handle them. I mean, you can delete them, and you will not be billed for that. You will be billed only for 10 machines. This scalability and elasticity is the major point because of which organizations move to Azure or Entra. High availability. When you have your own infrastructure, it's your IT team's responsibility to ensure that all the servers are up and down. For example, let's say you have one Active Directory server where all the users authenticates and log into their machine. One morning, one AD server went down, and users say, okay, like any of the users, let's say you have 1,000 users, none of them is able to log in. Your entire business will go down. Why? Because there's no identity system which would authenticate users to log in. They would not be able to log in. Then until your team tries to get that server up, everything is down. A complete total like loss of business. But when you're working with Azure, it's Microsoft responsibility to provide you the like it's like 99.99 or 99.995% SLA that your users would be able to get all the services which they are paying to. So it's their responsibility. If one AD server goes down, means the one Azure AD server goes down, then any other server should be able to handle that traffic to authenticate them. Global reach. Let's say your business has some users from USA, some in Germany, some in India, some in China. So this, when they access any resource, there's no lagging, there's no time delay to access them. That is the responsibility of microserver to ensure wherever the user is, the resources should be available to near him, or there should, even if the resource is far away, there should not be any kind of lag. If you have your own business, you'll have to ensure that you set up your infrastructure in those countries, but it's Microsoft responsibility here. Then security, you have got multi-factor authentication, you have got conditional access policy, you have got defender applications. Those all are available under Azure, which comes free, or you have to pay for like little amount for a license. And as soon as you pay for that, then you get access to all of these services here. Updates, and like it's not your headache to patch all the updates on all the servers. It's Microsoft's responsibility. You don't have to worry about it until and unless you are deploying your own machines, your own servers. We will talk about three terms there, wherein you have to manage everything and wherein Azure is managing this thing. And then again, yes, 24 into 7 support. If you get if you're not aware what is happening and you need some support, that support is always available from Microsoft team. Your IT persons can always contact them. So there are few concepts which you should be aware of, that there are some scenarios wherein you, even if it's Microsoft infrastructure, you will have to manage certain things, and there are certain things which are managed entirely by Microsoft. Have you ever heard about these terms, IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS? SaaS. I would like to see a couple of responses. Yes, no, maybe anything if you have heard of these. SaaS, PaaS. Yes, no, maybe. Yep. Okay, so what are these terms? So as I was talking about Azure, so IaaS means infrastructure as service. So there are three models which you can opt for when working with Azure. One, IaaS, infrastructure as a service, means it would give you some space. Azure, you can go there and you can ask Azure, okay, I just need some space to deploy my own machines, my own network, my own applications, which I will be handling myself. You only give me some space. So if I draw it and explain it like this, for example, you want to set up your own restaurant. You go to a building owner and ask that building owner that I want to set up my restaurant, my hotel. Please give me a space. So that building owner, or you think it is of like Azure, it will give you a building only. And in that building, it will give you, let's say, some AC for the temperature control, and maybe some like what I say, like a space for kitchen, only space, nothing else. And a space where you can set up your own infra, like your tables and everything. So because that owner is giving you only building and some basic infrastructure, let's say toilets and something or else which you can think of, like a basic thing, that is known as infrastructure as a service, wherein you are just asking for some space and everything else will be managed by you. When we talk about platform as a service, that means you are only asking for the building and the servers where you can deploy your application. In this case, servers and network and IPs and anything else which is required to set up your infrastructure, that will be provided by Azure. However, the applications, for example, the MS Entra, that is an application wherein users are created, or you talk about any other application, let's say your ticketing system, ServiceNow, you want to host that. So servers, the responsibility to keep those servers 24 by 7 live, the responsibility to keep network all the time live, that will be Azure's responsibility. But the application which you are going to run on those infrastructure, that will be your responsibility. If something goes wrong with the application itself which is running on that infrastructure, that hardware, that you'll have to manage yourself. If a bug comes in, you'll have to manage. Talking about here the restaurant example, so let's say you got the building which was IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Then when we talk about platform as a service, so you get the table, all the tables. Okay, that owner says, I will give you all the tables. I will give you all the utensils and all the everything which is required to cook your food. I will give you the vegetables. I will give you the labor, the cooks, the maids, or let's say the waiters, everything, all of which, or the like the interior, like the aquarium, or anything which you can think apart from the infrastructure, that will be given by me, but the menu will be decided by you. When I say menu, that means like you have got these structures. However, the menu and the vegetables will have to be, forget about vegetables, like labor is given by them, but you will have to manage the vegetables, you will have to get the daily items which you want to cook, and you'll have to decide the menu yourself, and you'll have to handle the customers yourself. Rest I will provide. So that is an example of platform as a service, wherein the servers, the networks, the IPs, or whatever is needed to host your applications, that will be given by Azure. You just design your own application, your own code, and manage that application. If there's a vulnerability in that application, if a hacker can get into that application and access your information, that is your headache. I have nothing to do with that. But that is the platform as a service. You can deploy your own applications. The third example is SaaS, software as a service. That means ready to use software applications over the internet. That means you say, I will pay for the license. I don't want to take any headache. You just give me everything. Now, in this scenario, Azure or this building owner would say, okay, I will give you vegetables, I will give you the menu. Your task will be only to handle the customer and the customer service. That is it. Everything you just tell me in the advance. Okay, menu is there, and when users will come in from this, like when they enter, like their billing and like their management and their happiness, their satisfaction level, everything you will take care. But everything which is going behind the scene in the kitchen, in the washroom cleanliness, everything, that will be managed by me. If something goes down, let's say at any point of day the cook is absent, so it will be my responsibility to arrange for another cook or another staff. If the cashier goes away, then it will be my responsibility to arrange for the cashier. You just take care of these users and the like the food which is being served. That is it. That is the example of SaaS. Now when we talk about Entra, so Entra is an application or as a service which in which you have the entire application hosted on some server in the backend. You don't get access to those servers. You only get access to their application wherein you can create a user, you can delete a user, you can create groups, you can create or you can use, you can deploy your applications if you have third-party applications which you can integrate with the Entra. Apart from that, you cannot do anything. Everything is managed by Microsoft. So for example, if I show you a look of how Entra looks like,